You mentioned Collin Sexton, though. Last time we spoke, we were both pretty sure that he was going to end up getting an extension. Instead, season-ending injury, entering restricted free agency. How should we expect this entire thing to play out? Is anything on the table, or do you think it's just overwhelmingly likely that, especially given the nature of restricted free agency, how little cap space is out there, the uncertainty surrounding his health, do we just expect him to be back in Cleveland next year?
I expect him to be back. All the beat reporting seems to suggest that the initial talks aren't that far apart, that there is a desire on both sides to be together. This isn't a Kyrie Dion Waiter situation where it's two personalities that butt heads. Garland and Sexton are really close. And when you listen to the comments of Kobe Altman, like, he credits Sexton for starting the turnaround of their culture. He's just such a hard worker. And even though the start of the season wasn't the best for him offensively, the three-point shooting wasn't there, he still was at a career high in two-point field goal percentage. And he was playing off ball. Like, he was still, even though he was kind of the primary play finisher, the ball wasn't stopping with him. He was playing as a cutter. His defensive metrics were a lot better. You look at defensive EPM in the small sample size, and it was much, much improved. And I think that's what you would hope for Collin Sexton next season, is once he gets his legs under him, that he's able to take on a little less responsibility offensively, be primarily that play finisher, but contribute in some of the other ways where, in coming into the NBA, it was thought that he was going to be a good defensive prospect. He's got basically a 6'10 wingspan. He's got a high motor. You can see the on-ball effort from him. Off-ball is a totally different story. I have a lot of concerns on that end of the floor, but I do think that he's someone that would bring that playmaking juice, that scoring punch, the ability to get and make a good shot or a tough shot when the shot clock runs down. And when you look at the Cavs last season, that was one thing that they sorely missed. That was something that they were really hoping that Caris LeVert can bring to the table. And while LeVert might be a better playmaker than Sexton, he's not a better scorer. Right. And I don't think it's not easy to just write off someone that efficiently averaged 24 and 4. Like, I don't get the sentiment that all of a sudden, when there's more talent around a player, that all of a sudden it's going to be harder for them to score. That's usually not how this works.
Especially, and even during that season, which I always go back to, I think Zach Lowe called it the most disrespected 24 points per game season in NBA history, because it came on like, it was like 38% from three, better on 50% on twos. And he was still doing, there was a lot more on-ball work for him, but he didn't feel like overly ball dominant during that season either. And so I'd be with you that you think his game would scale eventually to having better talent around him. How do you view, though, that collective of Garland, Sexton, LeVert? Is this something that we should expect to be more of a placeholder with, Sexton, new deal coming up, Garland's extension eligible, and LeVert, I think he's extension eligible now, but he hits free agency after next season.
Yeah.
Do you, one, think that it's not even a matter of, do you have to play them together on the floor? You could try it, but do you think it's like a triumvirate that works long-term, or do you view it as more of just like this stopgap?
I feel Garland and Sexton can work long-term. Whether they're starting together or not, I don't have real strong feelings on that. I know it's funny. I feel like one of the ways that people can signal that, hey, I'm not just a casual basketball fan, I understand at a higher level, is saying that an efficient scorer on a bad team is better coming off the bench. Like, no, I understand that there's more to it. Like, I get the Sexton as off the bench and as a six-man kind of thing, but at the same time, someone needs to earn that spot from him. And Isaac Okoro got a lot of opportunities last season, and assuming that Sexton is Sexton again, there wasn't enough from Okoro to make me think, okay, he has to start over Sexton. Like, Sexton in that starting role and then being the first sub out and running with the second unit and staggering the minutes with Garland, like, to me, I think that works really well. It gives you really dynamic ball handlers at all times. When it comes to Caris LeVert, that's a little more tricky because, as you mentioned, he is extension eligible. If Sexton is getting a new deal, you have to kind of start to think about resource allocation there. And I think he's interesting because, well, one, he is extension eligible. He is an expiring contract, so teams can kind of, if they value him long-term, they can either sign him to an extension or they can kind of play out the season and maintain some flexibility. I think that might create interesting opportunities. So, like, when you look at the trade market, Chris Fedor put it out there that, hey, maybe Cavs and Jazz might talk about a LeVert for Mike Conley deal where Utah can get kind of a more dynamic ball handler, someone that can help the offense and make things a little easier for Donovan Mitchell. And Mike Conley can step into that Ricky Rubio deal or role where, yeah, he's a little overpaid and he's a little over the hill, but in a reserve role off the bench and as a mentor to Darius Garland, there could be some appeal to that. Maybe Duncan Robinson, you have a similar situation where the Cavs just say, we need to get some shooting in here. My goodness, even though we got better, the spacing got worse last season. Let's figure out something there, right? Like there are going to be options available, but I do see, I think the most likely outcome is that LeVert starts the season. I just don't know if he's going to finish the season with the Cavs.
And you have to start like two of those guys because I think I'm more concerned about the Sexton LeVert minutes together without Garland because Garland's just like infinitely scalable. I think Sexton is super important to making the partnership with LeVert work because LeVert just doesn't have the same, like it's not even just experience, but it's even skill off the ball dating back to his time in Brooklyn. And so that could be sort of a tenuous fit if you're going to make Sexton that first yank out of the lineup. And then I guess is LeVert the first sub coming off the bench? If it's Okoro at that point, you're going to be relying on a lot of Sexton and LeVert, which could get iffy. And so I don't even know what to think. We didn't get to see it, which sucked. I don't even know what to think about this fit. It feels like a little bit of an overlap oddity and not something that you look at LeVert's size, you're like, oh, could you maybe play all three of them at once? I don't even know if I would ever want to try that if I'm Cleveland.
Yeah, I could see Garland, Okoro, LeVert, Mobley, Allen working, but like Garland, Sexton, LeVert, I just that gets tricky. And like if they do go out and draft Malachi Branham at 14, all of a sudden like there is a lot of redundancies between Branham and LeVert, right? Like they are very, very similar offensive players, even though Branham has a little bit more outside shooting. There's deficiencies on the defensive end. There's questions about their playmaking and getting other guys involved. Like there's just so many questions and they're good problems to have. Like you want to have talent and I think they're primed for a consolidation type move. But at the same time, if they're all in the mix starting next season, I do think that could be a little bit tricky.
I love Mike Conley to the Cavs. People are too down on Mike Conley. I know he's had a couple rough playoff moments the past two seasons, but he's also just been really bankable during the past two regular seasons. I love that fit and had not thought of it until you mentioned it.
I would really like it. We've discussed it in the Chase Down Discord, and like it's been something that I've debated with other people that cover the team. And there's a split. Like there's a lot of people concerned about him being washed, concerned about the contract and all that. But to me, like you look at what happened with Kevin Love, where all of a sudden he's in a more kind of the minutes are reduced. He's in a better role for where he is at that stage of the career. And like over the regular season, Conley's numbers, like he's still shooting the ball at a good pace. He doesn't turn the ball over too much. Like he's a steady hand. He's a veteran. Someone, as I said, that can be a mentor to Garland. Like I do think that that's a really, really interesting possibility.